is William Lee. I'm 53 years old, and I've been an actor since 1997. My parents early on got divorced, so I think I was maybe 4 years old. And then when they got divorced, I think their lives were kind of both falling apart. They had reached a pinnacle of the American dream in a lot of ways. They bought a house, they had really nice cars, and they achieved a lot in terms of what we saw from the outside. And then when they got divorced, I don't know where my mom went. She short-circuited and left. And my dad just couldn't afford to take care of me. So I think from 4 till about 10, I just went from family to family. I went from relatives to friends. And so for about 6 years, I lived at a lot of different places. And then by the time I was 10, I went back to my dad. My dad was living in a motel in Hawaii, and the last person to take care of me was my aunt, and she said that you're gonna go back to your dad, and I think it was about 10. Saw him at the airport, and we moved in this little motel in Hawaii, and that was the beginning of, kind of like the true beginning of my relationship with my dad. My dad was one of the first Taekwondo masters to come to the United States in the late 60s, and so his dream for me was to be a doctor, like every Korean father. I went to Berkeley, I got recruited. I was one of the first recruits to get onto a recruitment program at Berkeley to fight, to do Taekwondo. And so I did that, and I realized I wasn't a great student. And so I started doing a lot of volunteer work to try to butter my law school. I was gonna become a lawyer, law school applications. And then my father just got a little too old to teach Taekwondo anymore. So I stopped school for a second, and I went to go help him. And so I ran his Taekwondo studios. I opened up 2 more, and I thought I was gonna be a master and run schools for the rest of my life. The running joke of my family is my dad would ask me what my bills were a month, and I would say, I think I said $1,400. And I worked about 100 hours a week, and he paid me $1,500. So I had an extra $100 to play with. And I realized at the age of 24, 25, that I probably will only make an extra $100 for the rest of my life being the eldest son. So I said, I saw Jason Scott Lee in a movie called Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. And I said, well, if I'm gonna be broke, I might as well be broke doing something that I dreamt, that I wanted to do. My dad had a martial arts student who was a screenwriter. And I asked him some questions, and I said, how did you do what you did? I said, if I tried this, do you think I could make it? And he said, well, what are you doing right now? I said, well, eventually I gotta go back to school to apply to law school. And he said, well, how many hours a week do you think you would put into law school? And I said, probably about 100. And he said, if you put 100 hours a week into anything, there's a high probability you're gonna make it. So I came to LA, and I realized I didn't go to Juilliard, I didn't go to Yale Drama School, so I had made my own school up. I did go to acting class, but I also I allotted 8 hours a day, and I took 2 hours to study movies, and 2 hours to read plays, and 2 hours to work out, and 2 hours to study with acting partners. And I did that for a couple years, and I was really lucky early on and got some roles that, helped move my career along. At that time especially, I had white roommates. Those roommates went on during pilot season. Pilot season is usually from January to March, February, end of February. It's where all the actors basically compete in this thing where you just try to fight for any job that's gonna be a new TV show. And so my white friends would get maybe 3 or 4 auditions a day, and they were learning how to audition. They basically, because you were doing it so much, but as Asian American actors, we would maybe get 1 a month. You're trying to beat guys who are getting up to bat, 3, 4 times a day, and you're getting up to bat once a month. So I had to pretend. I made my own pretend auditions. I did all kinds of crazy things to just replicate practice. I didn't really know what I thought I was going to do for the last 27 years, but I'm very grateful that I get to do this for this long, because I came at a time when there were so few of us, especially Korean Americans. There was just a handful of us, and we were all fighting for the same job, and there was probably only 2 to 3 real jobs, meaning that we could put food on our table a year. You know, when I first started, it was me, Daniel Dae Kim, John Cho, Sung Kang. Those are kind of the Korean Americans that I came up with. We all became friends. We were all in the same rooms auditioning together for the same gangster parts, or, you know, computer science geeks that were, you know, necessary to solve the crime. But, you know, what's amazing when I look at all our careers now, we've gone from killing a lot of people on screen to dying a lot on screen, to now being the heroes of a lot of different shows. So it's pretty remarkable. I think the difference between back then and now is, back then you got 3 to 5 lines, if you were lucky, on a piece of paper audition sheet, and you had to make that seem like Shakespeare and somehow get hired for this job. Now when I see, like, you know, Aquafina and, you know, Simu and all these, you know, different Henry Golding, like, they're doing like really fleshed out, fun leading role characters. We never had that shot. Even for me, I, you know, always joke, like, I did The Good Doctor for the last 7 years. It's funny that that was such a dream, like an impossibility, that you were gonna play a doctor on TV when that's all we were back then in real life. So for me to do that, I think is pretty cool. In terms of competitiveness, it's really hard to say, especially during COVID, because as soon as COVID happened, everything went to tapes. And, you know, you put yourself on tape, and I don't even know what that's like, because you don't know if you have a shot, because there could be 10,000 tapes being sent in for one role, and those casting directors or producers can only see so many. And so it may just be in vain. It may, you know, it's really hard to say. At least back then, you knew when you walked into a room, you were actually being seen. In terms of competitiveness, I think it's more competitive, but also there's more roles and there's more amazing roles. The part that I cherished the most was probably Altered Carbon for Netflix. I did a show. My friend called me up, who created the show, and said, will you come play this part? And I was already on a different show, so I couldn't do it. They ended up needing to recast someone, and I was available, but for this last role, I had to gain a lot of weight. So I was about 200, almost 200 pounds, and I was really out of shape. And then I get the phone call again and said, hey, we were casting, how fast can you get in shape? I said, I don't think you know what I look like right now. What was special about that was, this was one of the first people in Hollywood who saw me as a leading male. And she was this, you know, she's an amazing lady who in 2008 casted me in The Bionic Woman. When we're still friends to this day, and she calls me up and says, you're playing this role. I wrote the role for you. And so I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but I remember shooting that episode, and it was a $20-something million episode. For an episode of television, just to put it in context, is $4 to $6 million an episode is considered a big TV show. I mean, this episode was probably $25 million, and I got to be the lead of this episode. And I was like, wow, this is what it feels like to be the white guy in Hollywood. Like, you get the big slow-mo shots, and you get the big, you know, all the big toys, and they're shooting you and making you look heroic and all these things. And I was like, wow, this is so amazing, and I can't believe it's taking me 20 years to feel this experience. And I only felt this experience one other time, was when I shot a movie in Hong Kong. And I was the lead of this movie, and the roles were flipped. Like, all the small parts were white actors. They were in Hong Kong acting. And I remember, like, they weren't being treated badly. They were being treated like how I was being treated my whole career in LA. But it was really like, I was like, wow, that sucks. And then I realized that's what I went through. But yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, that was probably my most cherished moment. My goals have shifted. Like you said, when you're in your 50s, you think much differently than your 30s. In your 30s, you chase this grand notion of, you know, traveling the world and being an actor and doing big things. And I got to do pieces of that. I don't think I ever achieved everything that was in my heart and my head. But now at 53, I was like, wow, that really doesn't even matter. What matters to me now is I can take care of my parents, I can take care of my family, play cops and robbers for fun every once in a while, tell an amazing story once in a while. So yeah, I'm the living cliche of, I just want to be with my family, do enough to make do the things that make me happy, and through that, being able to provide for the circle around me. My name is Will Yoon Lee, and this is my Korean American story.